girl and I'm fans of Oasis, Boyzone and Manchester United.
I'm a Catholic boy from Northern Ireland.
I would say I'm an Irish girl.
I am British.
British.
I identify myself as Asian.
I identify myself as boy.
I'd identify myself as a proud Irish girl and an Oasis fan.
Oi! Yo! Let's go. Now, Northern Ireland really is a mixed bag of people who identify themselves in various ways. By their religion, Protestant or Catholic, by their nationality, Irish or British, or by their politics, Unionist or Nationalist. Now, many people think these labels don't matter very much at all. The important thing is to live together in peace. But for some people, it's all very important, and it divides society up into those who believe a certain set of things and those who don't. Now, we're going to do a bit of digging, whatever foot you like, to see if Northern Ireland was always divided like this. Now, digging time is the 1500s to the 1700s, and that's a long time ago, but we hope that by looking into the past we can try and understand something about the present. Now, huge myths have grown up over the years. You know how people like to exaggerate, but we're going to try and see the bigger picture and what really happened. What was Ireland like in the 1500s? The landscape looked very different from today, apart from the mountains that have been around for millions of years. There were forests, large areas of bogland, open farmland, few towns, mostly on rivers, and no roads. And since there were no roads, people preferred to travel by river and by sea. Ireland was divided into small kingdoms. Some were Gaelic Irish kingdoms. One of the strongest was Ulster. Some were the kingdoms of the Old English, many of whom had adopted Irish ways and were more Irish than the Irish themselves. And some belonged to the Scots, like the MacDonalds of Antrim. They brought in Scottish mercenary soldiers, called gallows. They all shared the same language, Gaelic, and the same religion, Catholic. There was one small area of Ireland round Dublin, which was controlled by the English crown. There they spoke English and lived under English law. This area was called the Pale. Inside the Pale, it was civilized, but beyond the Pale, they thought it was wild and unruly, primitive and barbarian. The Pale got its name from palings, like these ones. And the expression beyond the Pale still exists to this day. In fact, some people, and I'll never know why, seem to think that I'm beyond the pale.
If you're said to be beyond the pale, it means you are abnormal or strange in some way.
Beyond the Pale is an area between Dundalk and the border where there's no law, and if you go there, take your life in your hands.
Beyond the Pale means to like go into the unknown.
The Pale was an area around the city of Dublin in the south of Ireland. Beyond that was what was thought as wild Ireland.
The Pale was Dublin, and beyond it was useless, and it was the Irish native land.
But was Gaelic society really wild and barbarous? You see, the people who were describing it as wild and barbarous were all working for the English government, and they neglected to mention certain things like poetry and craftsmanship.
He wore a coat of crimson velvet with aglets of gold, over a great cloak of bright crimson satin girded with black velvet, and a bonnet with a feather set full of aglets of gold.
No, Kate. I'm convinced my cousin Hugh has a bad dose of England fever. He never hunts anymore. He eats nothing but meat that's been hanging longer than a forgotten highwayman dangling from a twisted oak. Turns his nose up at champ. Never drinks milk nor ale. I'm telling you, the man has less brains than land.
Well, it's not that bad. He might be a wee bit odd, but it's just pre-election nerves.
Well, I'm telling you, if yous all vote for him instead of me as chieftain, you'll get a Maguire who's madder than Granny Maguire's maddest billy goat.
Oh, you mean the goat that thinks it's a helicopter?
What's a helicopter? But anyway, I forgot. You can do no wrong in your eyes. You'd still go all egg-eyed if he showed up smelling of women's perfume and quoting poetry like a soft-brained idiot.
Poetry is very fashionable, actually.
All the people, so many people, they all go hand in hand, park life. Caller. Kate, I've been looking all over for you.
You, we were just talking about you. What nature of injury could cause you to wear such a neck brace? Could it be that you were a victim of a broadsword attack, perhaps?
It's the latest fashion, something you know nothing about. It's, rough. It's all the rage in England.
Worse than I thought. You're a victim of fashion.
You smell like a meadow full of wildflowers.
That'll be a meadow full of buttercups and daisies.
It's the latest unisex fragranced oils from the Far East.
You can't go hunting smelling like that. You're fighting off all the prey.
That depends on what you're trying to catch. And by the way, I knew there was some reason I had to speak to you. The votes have just been counted, and I'm the new chief.
But he was looking madder than a mad belly goat.
In the 1500s, that's the 16th century to you and me, English rulers began to take a greater interest in Ireland and wanted to take control of it. They feared that Ireland might become a threat to their power. And one of the main reasons for this? Religion. In Europe, people were protesting against the corruption in the Catholic Church. When demands for reform weren't met, churches independent of Rome were set up by Martin Luther, John Calvin and others. The movement was called the Reformation, and the people involved were called Protestants because they were protesting.
It's disgraceful. Any old Tom, Dick or Harry can become a priest. Most of them are uneducated, and they don't know how to conduct a church service properly. They don't care about teaching us about Jesus. Some Catholics still believe in magic and witchcraft. Can you believe that?
I can never understand the services because they're always in Latin. So what's the point in going? I mean, why can't it be in the language of the people?
Europe split along religious lines. France, Spain, Portugal and Ireland remained Catholic, while England and the Netherlands became Protestant. King Henry VIII of England hated paying huge taxes to the Pope. When the Pope refused to give Henry a divorce, he broke away from the Catholic Church and made himself head of the Church of England. In 1541, Henry declared himself King of Ireland and forced Gaelic chiefs to surrender their lands. Their lands were granted back to them if they swore loyalty to him. The policy was known as surrender and re-grant. After King Henry died, his daughter Elizabeth I continued to try to take control of Ireland. She feared it could be used as a springboard for invasion by France or Spain.
Elizabeth I, born September the 7th, 1533, star sign Virgo. She was tall, thin, had hazel eyes, reddish hair, and awfully bad breath. She spoke Greek and Latin well. She was intelligent, witty, but had a terrible temper. She painted her face white. Well, it was very fashionable at the time. Then she'd paint veins on top. She spent lots of money on clothes, and she had nearly 2,000 dresses in her wardrobe. She was the gal who did say no. She never married, although she was asked many times. Her boyfriend was the Earl of Essex. Her favourite food was potatoes. Her ambition, to avoid war at all costs.
In 1968, a diver found the wreck of a Spanish ship called the Girona. It was a galleass, part of the Spanish Armada of 1588. But what, you might ask, was the Spanish Armada doing on the coast of Ireland? Well, Philip II of Spain was a man with a plan. It was a very expensive plan, and boy did it cost him a lot of money. He wanted to invade England. In the 16th century, Catholic Spain and Protestant England were racing to control new lands like America to add to their wealth and power. It was a time of exploration and colonial expansion. Spain had conquered the most land and had sent people to live in the new world colonies they had discovered. The gold and silver they found soon made Spain rich. England was playing catch-up. When English pirates started attacking and looting Spanish treasure ships, Philip of Spain was furious. Queen Elizabeth of England denied all knowledge of the attacks, but meanwhile she was having her new dresses made in Spanish cloth of gold, stolen from the Spanish ships.
Philip II of Spain, born May the 21st, 1527, star sign Taurus. A devout Roman Catholic, a proud king. He had 4 wives, one of whom, Mary Tudor, was half-sister to Elizabeth. He asked Elizabeth to marry him, but she said no. He couldn't handle the rejection, and they became great enemies after that. He was very conscientious and thorough. He spent lots of time sifting through government paperwork. Like most kings, he kept a skull by his bed. Hobbies: building up a large navy and collecting Aztec gold. Ambition: to control as many countries as he could conquer and bring England back into the Catholic faith.
A Spanish armada sailed into the English Channel in May 1588. But English warships and fireships inflicted terrible damage on them, and they had to cut their anchors and flee around the coast of Ireland and Scotland, where 19 of them were wrecked. You see, having cut their anchors, it was easy to be driven onto the rocks by violent storms. And another reason why so many of them were wrecked, well, just look at the maps they were using. A few survived and made it to shore.
Captain Francisco de Juela, captain in the Spanish Armada. I was now able to show myself in the town, which was of thatched houses. And there were some very pretty girls with whom I struck up a relationship. The savages are well affected to us Spaniards because they realize that we are attacking the heretics who are their great enemies. If it was not for those natives that kept us as if belonging to themselves, not one of our people would have escaped. We owe them a good turn for that, though they were the first to rob and strip us when we were cast ashore.
The strongest of the Lords of Ulster was Hugh O'Neill, and he tried to unite the others to defend Gaelic society against English domination. It was a fight that lasted 9 years.
Hugh O'Neill, born 1540, the last Prince of Ulster. A trained diplomat and clever tactician, supported English rule when it suited him, but eventually rebelled against it. Spent his youth in the Pale. Elizabeth made him Earl of Tyrone, married the daughter of English military commander Marshal Bagnall, and campaigned with his father-in-law against rival Gaelic chieftains. He went through the ceremony to become the O'Neill with all its ancient power and privileges. Ambition: to become Gaelic King of Ulster.
O'Neill used mass conscription to swell his army. His main tactic was guerrilla warfare, hit and run. At first, he was successful against the English. But then the English began a scorched earth policy. The land was burned and food supplies destroyed, and the people starved. And the English fought him in the winter when the Irish soldiers couldn't find cover in the leafless forests. O'Neill asked Spain for help. But instead of arriving in Ulster, the Spanish landed in Kinsale, County Cork. O'Neill's army had to march all the way through Ireland to help them, and they were defeated. Now, some battles change everything, like the Battle of Hastings or the Battle of Britain. Well, you can add Kinsale to that list, because in European terms, it shifted the balance of power to England, and then Spain wanted peace. It also marked the end of the old Gaelic society and completed Elizabeth I's conquest of Ireland. In 1603, O'Neill surrendered and signed the Treaty of Mellifont. But O'Neill was given a pardon and allowed to keep his lands in return for obeying English law.
I have some bad news and I have some good news. Hugh has been killed in battle, but I'm here. Kate, Hugh has been brutally murdered in battle. Will you marry me? Hugh is dead, but I'm a better kisser. Quick on it, what are you doing here?
Well, while you and Hugh were off fighting, I married Kate, merely for convenience sake. I've taken 3/4 of your land, so it's quite safe in my hands. Well, someone had to. At least it keeps it in the family. Look at the chop. Would you like a mug of mead?
Mead? You turncoat, you. Why, you're even worse than your brother Hugh. First you make peace and get all pally with the English, leaving me to fight for O'Neill. Then you have the nerve to steal the land that the English gave to me after months of hard bargaining on my part.
Well, at least I offered you a mug of mead.
And you'll probably take 3/4 of it when my back's turned.
What's that supposed to mean?
Well, if you can take a man's land and woman, you'll not think twice about taking a man's drink.
Connor, I withdraw the offer of the mead. And for goodness sake, why don't you do yourself a favour and dunk yourself in a bath?
This is Rathmullen on Lough Swilly in County Donegal. On the 14th of September 1607, Hugh O'Neill and other Gaelic chieftains like Maguire and O'Donnell and all their families set sail for Europe. This is known as the Flight of the Earls. But why did the Gaelic chieftains abandon their homeland and leave their own people without leaders? Was this some kind of heroic flight, or were they simply running away?
Why did he go? One reason was that he took fright, that he felt he was going to be arrested, that he was going to be poisoned, that he was going to be executed, and simply that he needed to clear out. Was he a hero or was he a villain? Those who consider that he was a villain say that he and the other 100 members of the upper classes in Ulster deserted their ordinary people and left them to their fate, to the English and Scottish soldiers of King James I. But others would argue that Hugh O'Neill was leaving in order to come back with the assistance of the King of Spain and the Pope and other Catholic rulers in Europe.
He travelled all night with his women and children. The Countess, his wife, being exceedingly weary, slipped down from her horse and, weeping, said she could go no further. Whereupon the Earl drew his sword and swore a great oath that he'd kill her in the place if she would not pass on with him and put on a more cheerful countenance.
What were the people to do without their leaders? As always happens in history, it's the ordinary people who are left behind. The people who had fought for the Earls and worked for the Earls. 500,000 acres were confiscated from the native Irish. Once the Earls had gone, James I was quick to move in. He was a man with a plan, and that plan was the plantation of Ulster. He was worried about the Old English and the Gaelic Irish, because they were Catholic and might plot with Spain against them. It didn't matter that the Old English had already declared their loyalty to the Crown. It didn't matter to him because he wanted to make sure that in future there would be no question of loyalty when it came to Irish leaders. And so he planted the Protestants. From there on, there were very big changes in Ulster.